alone are my heart's desire, and I long to worship you. Roxanne Hansford, looking forward to sharing some time with him. Now, come on up. Frank and his family, of course, are on vacation, and grateful for a chance to sit down with you guys and ask some questions and give you a chance to share some things about yourself. We have shared in the past, and I'd like for these folks to hear some of those same kind of things. So tell us first where you were born and something about your family growing up.
I grew up, is that too loud? I grew up in a suburb of St. Louis, and family of 5, 2 older sisters. Parents are deceased now, and Cardinal fan, like some of you here. Yeah. And I slept out on the sidewalk in '68. I didn't get tickets. But my life, or my home life, and I think I've told you before, it was a little volatile, and so I spent a lot of time outside and got a lot of good experiences in Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts and sports and things like that, and but I do remember always enjoying, I helped my mother do Thanksgiving dinner from a little guy, and I still do Thanksgiving dinner, so that was always fun. So, that's what I know. Your turn.
I was born in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, when my dad was in the Air Force. I did kindergarten and first grade in Wichita, Kansas, where my parents were from, where they went back after Dad got out of the service. I did the rest of elementary school through 6th grade in Poughkeepsie, New York. Dad got transferred out to Boulder, Colorado, and that's where I was in junior high. That's what it used to be called. Junior high, high school, and then college, where we met. We were starting summer session together.
Now you, before we jump into meeting each other in college, what did your dad do?
He worked for IBM.
He was IBM guy, and so he got relocated periodically as part of
yes,
promotions and that kind of thing.
yes,
right?
Yes,
Okay.
and so I didn't grow up moving like a military kid or anything, but I looked on it. Although I was really sad to leave New York, my parents were, on the other hand, thrilled to leave New York and go back to the Midwest. This time, Colorado, kind of a dream come true. So.
Okay, so Jim, you grew up in St. Louis,
Mm-hmm.
never left?
No, I left right out of high school.
Okay,
Yep.
and so y'all met at college?
Yes.
And where was that?
Go ahead.
It used to be called Western State College. I think it's part of the University of Colorado things in Gunnison, Colorado. Some people have heard of Crested Butte. It was just
It's a western slope.
20 miles or less from Crested Butte.
So what was the reason for going? I mean, that's not exactly a college.
After high school, actually before I finished high school, I joined the service on a 4-month delayed entry. And I took a motorcycle ride out there and happened to go through Gunnison at the time. And so when I was in the Army and had an opportunity to get out a little bit early, I applied and was accepted there, and was able to get left the Army a few months earlier than I could have had, and so it was a whole lot better than where I was.
Which was Vietnam.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, most any place is better than Vietnam during the war, right? Yeah.
right.
And so you met at college,
Mm-hmm.
and it was obviously love at first sight.
I don't remember that. Well, it was a small class. I mean, it was only
There were only 17 or 18 of us.
a small group, so we all saw each other, and we're always in the same classes together for summer session. But actually, my roommate was also a veteran, and he's the one that started dating her, and so I couldn't let that go on. So he was a Marine, and sorry for any Marines out there, but anyway, it worked out okay. I'll put it that way.
How do you feel about okay?
Worked out fabulous.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so what did you major in?
elementary ed.
Elementary ed?
Biology and chemistry in Western State, and then decided I would best be served if I transferred to University of Colorado a few years later in engineering.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you ended up being what? Doing what?
I was a chemical engineer and worked for chemical companies most of my career, and then as a consultant the last few years before I retired.
And I know y'all transferred a lot because of your job.
Again, kind of like her dad, not a whole lot, but yeah, we lived in initially Paducah, Kentucky, and then went to Cleveland, Ohio, and then to El Dorado, Arkansas, and then to Bourbonnais, Illinois, and now here. So
And all the time that he's doing his chemical thing, you're doing what?
Well, we had our first child a little earlier than we thought we would, and Scott was born. I had finished school, but Jim was still a student, and we lived in Boulder at the time, and Scott was born there in Colorado, and then 2.5 years later or so, we had Jesse when we lived in Cleveland, and then another 2 years later, we had Allison when we lived in El Dorado. So we all are different states. It's just weird, unusual.
And so you
I was home with the kids until Allison was in maybe 4th grade or so,
okay.
and I had an opportunity to work about that much. It was 2 hours a day as a teacher's aide in a couple of gifted classes and special ed classes.
And so all of that taking you to all these various places. So before I ask you the next question, I need to find out, when did you become a follower of Jesus, and what was the process for that for you, each of you?
Well, when we met that fall, maybe it was that winter, I'm not sure which, but and we were dating, we started looking for a church. I had not really been involved with the church, any church, for a very long time. And we went to several congregations there in Gunnison, and she had been to several and said, well, maybe not this one, but let's try this over here. We ultimately went to a little church not far from the school.
But I drug my heels because it was really small, and I figured they're going to know we're there, We can't sneak out.
Right. And we went in, I think it was a Sunday morning. And
But it was during the gospel
they
meeting.
were having a gospel meeting, and we heard something we, quite frankly, didn't seem to have heard at the other places, and that was Scripture being taught. And that, I think, affected us both, and we went back that night, and the remaining 3 nights probably of the gospel meeting.
Yeah.
And then November 5th of 1972, I was baptized, and that's my story. So there's great people there, mostly Texans
Or Oklahomans.
or Oklahomans, people who have moved to the area, and Mr. Baird was a preacher there, and he baptized both of us, but me at the time, and then her German teacher, and not German,
J.W. Campbell.
J.W. Campbell was a
He was a teacher at the school,
and-
at the college as well.
and made up a class for us to come and I guess he called it the college class, but it was just her and me. It was a small class, a small group of how many people were in the church? Maybe 7 families,
Yeah, something like that.
something like that. Yeah.
But I had grown up in churches all along. My mother was raised Assembly of God. My dad was raised a Quaker. And the earliest church I remember was in Millbrook, New York, and it was called Lyle Memorial Federated Church. And it was a bunch of people who didn't have enough to make a church of their own. So there were some Quakers, there were some Episcopals, there were some Lutherans, maybe some Presbyterians. You know, I don't know what the makeup was exactly, but I grew up doing that all along. And then when we moved to Colorado, we, for a few years, two years maybe, attended a Methodist church that was right down the street. And it became apparent to my parents that it was really just more of a social message. And so at the time, as a 8th grader or whatever, I was kind of chagrined to, you mean we're going to go to a service here and then we're going to go to another service, because they were looking around for a good message. And so they did find that in a Presbyterian church there in Boulder. And and he did preach from the Bible. They had women elders and things like that were kind of a stumbling block for me when I, learned what the Bible said. But anyway, so I had looked for some churches that first summer when I went there, and just didn't see anything like what I had come from, being active in the youth group and things like that. And so honestly, I just kind of didn't go anywhere for a while. And then we got more serious, and I knew that I wouldn't have my parents' blessing if I married a non-Christian. And so we kind of started looking, and that's how we found the church.
So,
But I have to say this story, though. When we started going to that little church in Gunnison, which is still there, we were there a few years ago, we're going to be back there this year, next month, actually. But we both thought, well, maybe we could somehow get a collection and get them a piano or something.
I remember the first week thinking, I could probably get $100 and get them a piano,
We didn't know.
but they would have been shocked.
They would have said, thank you, no.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we actually got married, and in 73, like 2 years after we had started school. And I wasn't baptized until the following spring, because I felt strongly that to say that what I was being taught was right was to say that some other things were wrong. And that was really very difficult difficult parting or whatever for me. It was never really an issue for my parents because I believe they just believed that we just were a little bit stricter than what they were.
But yet there was tension within you,
Yeah,
trying to decide
yeah,
which way you needed to go and
Yeah.
which way you wanted to go.
yeah. I remember, yeah, it's just like, well, yeah, it's called the Church of Christ. I mean, how can you argue with that? You know, it's just, so I was fighting it, you know, I was fighting it, and because of just things I'd gotten used to.
Yeah, but also because there was this backdoor message that something was wrong with your
Yeah.
folks.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And you certainly didn't want to give that message.
No, I was really close to my parents.
Sure. And I know you're still close to your mom.
Yeah.
And so all of that together, just as we might say, walking down the aisle was not an easy thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I came forth at a message about giving, a financial sermon.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it was just the night. It was the right time.
it was
That's
the right
what it
time.
was.
Correct. But if there's a sermon to respond on, you know, that's a good one. So you're married. You've got these eventually 3 children.
Mm-hmm.
You are moving about periodically, and every place you go, you find a congregation to be a part of.
Right.
And every place you go, you influence a congregation. So tell me what that was like, to go to new places, find a new congregation, and to invest in it.
Well, in Gunnison, I'll let her speak for herself, but I was really babe in the woods here. But when we moved to Boulder, I got involved, and ultimately, I know this will amaze too many people, some people here, but I was a joy bus leader, and boy, I could really sing those songs, and so we had that most. I don't know, it's probably a year and a half or so. I did that, and obviously with others, but and that was with school. That was the main thrust I think I was probably involved in Boulder.
It was a big church at the time.
Yeah,
It was a big church. But,
gone
you know,
now.
Gunnison only had one church. Boulder only had one church. So it was kind of when we moved to Kentucky, and it was like, oh, whoa, there's choices.
So yeah, and then we moved to Kentucky, and we weren't there very long. That was my first professional job, and we were involved with small groups and
A visitation group.
visitation group, and so did that. And then Cleveland, we weren't there very long at all, and it was a struggling church. They were a fairly big church. They had built big building program and kind of an economic collapse, and people moved, and they had a big, beautiful building, and a crowd probably at no bigger than this, and maybe less.
But good people.
Great
Really
people,
great people.
great people, always. And so there wasn't a whole lot I remember getting involved in, and then
Because you were working all the time.
I was gone all the time.
We had a colicky newborn, and it would have been nice to live in Cleveland for a year, but he was really unhappy in his job. So,
Moved to El Dorado and a bigger congregation, and got involved in, me and another gentleman led the youth group for a couple of years, and involved with some of the educational ministries there, and
I had kind of an OBS type
OBS kind of thing.
thing,
So,
Brothers
yeah.
Keepers or whatever
But
it's called.
but she was involved. I was the church sponsored a Cub Scout and Boy Scout troop, and I was involved with the both. But I got involved was Scoutmaster for year and a half or so, maybe 2 years. And she was a cub leader.
They had a preschool,
Yeah.
at least for our first two children, our two boys went to the preschool there. So felt like they had a good start.
Yeah.
So, how would you describe how faith has grown over the years? How has your faith matured over the years? It's intentionally a broad question to
Yeah.
give you plenty of room.
Go ahead.
I would say there's lulls. There's been lulls. I really enjoyed being a stay-at-home mom, and that kind of thing. When we were in El Dorado, I was part of a Bible study fellowship, and that was a sincere Bible study, intense Bible study. And then when we moved up to Illinois, the kids were older and stuff like that, and the church was really small. What?
12,
60
15.
people or so, maybe altogether?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Less maybe.
So that was kind of back to being pioneers or something, and it was kind of hard after getting used to the wisdom of people who've been in the church for a lifetime and studied and things, to lots of young Christians, young not necessarily age, but out of Catholicism or out of something else or whatever. So I taught Sunday school and for several years up there, but it was, I think probably what grew my faith as much as anything up there was when I just applied myself to, okay, I'm going to read through the Bible this year. I'm going to make it my, whatever, a daily thing to read through my Bible. And that really, good stories, good, things. So then moving here, and without jumping the gun or anything, this congregation, we started in another congregation. If I can say that at this point in the game. Allison was looking for a vacation Bible school that Sailor could go to, and Sailor was in daycare, so daytime was out, and because with daycare you have to pay for it whether you go or not, and so you had a vacation Bible school in the evening, and I remember as soon as we came in, it was like, oh, this feels like home. This is what we've been looking for. It was just, some older, some younger, some in between, some, just different people, just a group of different people. And everybody seemed to be harmonious and caring about each other. Not that it was not like that, but it was just abundantly clear here. So that's really grown our faith. Just the relationships
And y'all have been here how
Teaching.
long now?
Since 2010,
2010. Okay.
late December 2010, I think.
Okay. You want to go talk about your faith and progression of it?
Not dissimilar to Roxanne's. I think we both have grown in congregations that are that are stronger, because quite frankly, I need that, and to see people who display that faith and their Christian walk, and not having necessarily a young look at how that's all supposed to happen. I think each place is give me, examples and all that, but at the same time, being in stronger congregations, and I'd say El Dorado and here, and quite honestly, Gunnison are probably
And Boulder.
You're right, Boulder. We're probably we're made, let's say, bigger strides in my faith from the standpoint and wanting to change my life to be more Christ-like.
I've got several questions. I'm looking at the time to make sure we
Yeah.
don't go too far. So talk to us a little bit about raising kids in faith.
Honestly, I have to.
Oh, I wasn't looking at you for that.
I was gone a lot, and I would say that I might have used the excuse of, well, God wants me to do the best job I possibly can at work, and so I probably played that card, and played it way too much, and was always felt like it was I had to do it, not somebody else could do it, and so she certainly, when the kids were younger, was stalwart of the kids and bringing them up, and I'm thankful, obviously, for that. And she doesn't get the right credit for it, but I am very thankful. They've given her credit. But.
Well, it was never, it was from the moment we first went to the Little Gunnison Church. I don't know why. I mean, I didn't grow up going to 3 services a week. It was just, well, we were enthusiastic about what we were hearing, and I guess I just was of the understanding that if they had a service, it was a good thing to be there. So, the kids, we went to, as I alluded, maybe, I don't know whether I said it, yeah, the colicky one was missed a lot of services just because he moved on from colic to respiratory problems and strep throat and things like that. But, we weren't good when they were in elementary school about finding a church on the road. We're both kind of introverted, kind of.
Yeah.
Lot. We didn't do that when they were real little. And I'm not one, I have issues about praying out loud. I think I know where it comes from, but, that's difficult for me. And so, I could pray a children's prayer with them, not necessarily a rote one, but, a children's prayer with them. But as far as leading them later, I wasn't good about that. So.
But through example,
Yes.
We did, as they say, the best we could. They certainly they knew that we were going to go to worship. They knew we were going to go to Bible class. And there was not a debate unless they were sick. And that alone has, I think, helped them and their families, and then they're doing similar things. And we're proud of each of them for that. So.
Well, and I asked that question because Allison was looking for a VBS for sailor.
Yeah,
You know, that just
Yeah.
doesn't happen. I've met Scott, and I think I've
Jesse,
met Jesse.
maybe, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think I've met Jesse too. And both of them, I know, are raising their own children
Right.
that way.
right.
And so that typically gets passed down. That's not something that just originates on its own. So while you're explaining your deficits, I wanted people
Well,
to
yeah,
hear your,
there's things that come up, and this'll date me, but I remember Scott probably saying, does God love Boy George? Maybe some people will know who I'm referring to. And I just, okay, I said, yes, he loves Boy George, but I don't know if he likes the way he dresses, So we had our open discussion that way.
right,
So-
right. Jim, talk to me a little bit about being a chemical engineer and how faith works in that realm.
Another deficit. Sorry, but for me, okay.
I'm not trying to give you,
No, I
get you to
realize
give
that,
deficits here.
but I mean, obviously, I was not good at, when I was at work, I was at work. And I know at the same time, people knew I was a Christian. And, but I sadly, like so many others, and as I've been, I think, seen examples of through many of you, my discussions were primarily, what do I got to do today? And because I always felt that my day was very, very filled, and if there was something that had to be done, I was generally building things and running the engineering department. I would often get that work, and so things had to be done seemingly a whole lot quicker than normal, and they kept giving me those jobs because I kept getting them done, but it took a toll from a lot of different ways. So I'm not a good example, and I'm thankful for our son Scott's a chemical engineer, and he's in many ways like that, but at the same time, he's able to, I think, be more balanced than I was. And I've coached him, don't do as I do, do as I say kind of thing. And at the same time, he saw some of those flaws, and I think he's listened to that. And Jesse is in a different kind of industry, but one that I enjoy talking about and dealing with, financial, and same kind of thing. He's probably the strongest of the three children that are family and work. He's probably got the best balance of any of our children, but at the same time, I was not good. At the same time, I've got the friends that I stay mostly in contact, particularly one lady, just a gem. She and I, don't take this wrong, but I've told some others about this, but I've told her that except for Roxanne, she's the woman I've spent the most time with overnight. Now, let me explain that. Because we worked a lot of 24-hour works in the kinds of things we did. And so she's just a dear person and a strong Christian. And we had lots of different discussions along those lines, and we still do. There's been some of that, but again, I'm sadly not a great example of that at all.
Well, I'm not going to sit here and argue with you, but at the same time, your faith accompanied you, and while you may not have been overt about sharing it, it accompanied you in your job. And
Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it did, yes. I know it did. Yes.
well, when you say people knew that you were a Christian,
Right.
that you were a follower, there must have been something there that gave evidence to that.
Hopefully so.
Right.
Yeah, right.
So let me reframe that question just a little bit. When did you lean upon your faith in your profession?
There are probably a whole lot more, and that is, there were times that I because I was doing early work on from an engineering package or whatever, I'd be out of town and, for several weeks at a time, and she knows I'd call her in the middle of the night and just say, I'm not sure I can do this, and we'd talk through that, and certainly those kinds of times when the job got me down, and I knew I was missing things at home, that I know that faith helped me get through those times and stay. I never ever seriously thought about I'm leaving the church or anything like that. That was never an option for me. Thankfully.
So Roxanne, when did you lean on your faith as you were raising kids and engaging in classrooms?
I would say, and we talked about that prior to this, I not so much in school, and school was by that I mean when I was working in the school system. I started off with the 2 hours a day, and it eventually just morphed into a full-time job. But it was a good, friendly atmosphere in that in the community that we're in had a large Nazarene university. Well, not large, but that was a big part of the town. And for a long time, the school district that we were in basically hired out of Olivet. And so there was a like-mindedness, language and stuff wasn't a problem and things like that. There was people that were at least giving a nod to faith. So that was good in work. So you always felt okay talking about, oh, this is what we talked about, in church yesterday or something like that. The church there in Bourbonnais was really small, and like I said, there were some very strong Christians there, and there were some very young Christians there. And without getting into too much, drawing this out too long, we had lived there 15 months or so, a little bit longer, I guess, and our oldest son, Scott, had a bicycle accident where he, to stop himself from crashing into our garage, he threw his arm out, and it went through the window of the garage door and came down on a shard of glass, and it severed an artery and 2 nerves. And when we first got to the hospital, I felt like, okay, everything's going to be okay, because I saw the cut. The cut was this big, and I didn't know, of course, obviously he was bleeding profusely, but he was starting to go into shock, and then they said something about, well, we think we're going to be able to save him. And then it was just like that hadn't even occurred to me that he couldn't be saved. And then it was like the next thing was, we hope we can save the arm. And it's like, what are you talking about? This is a cut this big, this wide. obviously it was deep. And he was, like I said, lost about half of his blood is what they estimated. And what had to have been on a Wednesday night
Yeah.
because he was in surgery for 7 hours, and the church came,
Yeah.
and that was it was very supporting to us, and it was a testimony to one of the surgeons that, said, I can't remember his exact words, but it was Dr. Rowland, just about, I hope that, I have people that care about me as much as your church family cares about you. Wow. So that really, and then of course his survival helped build our faith. But that was instrumental.
Absolutely. So, what's your favorite Bible verses that you
Brought mine.
brought yours? Go ahead.
I remember several years ago when I was really struck by Joshua. They've crossed the Jericho, and he meets the commander of the Lord's army. And I can't quote it. I'm not good at that kind of memorization. Put it to music, and I can remember it. But Joshua went to the commander of the Lord's army and said to him, Are you for us or for our adversaries? And he said, No, but I am the commander of the army of the Lord. Now I have come. And, it was just like, he asked the wrong question, didn't he? That really impressed me. That just, no, it's not whose side is God on. Then I love David's righteous indignation, where he says that, for who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? You're doing God a disservice, and we're his servants. Right. And then my New Testament favorite is Romans 5:8, but God shows his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And that's really meaningful to me.
Jim?
Okay. I'm a pretty simple guy. But I have some core scriptures that I go to just continue to strengthen my faith, give me strength when I need it. And it starts with Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created. Because I've never created, I don't create, but I've designed. And anybody that's in the design area knows that something of this world doesn't just happen. And so if God can create the heavens and the earth, he's that powerful. Anything else is, quite frankly, in my mind, not a problem for him. And so he's powerful. But then he comes in John 3:16 and he says, God so loved the world that he gave his son, but I've changed the world to God so loved me that he gave his son. And that shows his absolute love, his compassion, his mercy, his grace, and that really speaks to me. And then I come back to that with what's my response. And my response, as the scripture again says, is that I'm supposed to love God with all my heart, my soul, my mind, and to love my neighbor as myself. It tells me that I'm supposed to love my enemy, that I really have to work on. It says other places to love my wife as Christ loved the church. And there's other scriptures, but those are the three that I pretty much encompass most of those things. And then I look to Corinthians 13 and says, what is love? And I read that, and that's not, I've had to learn how to do that. And so I go to those scriptures to just, quite frankly, I'm at one of them, I would guess at least every day, if not several times a day, because if I can lean on those things to pretty well get me out of things that maybe I would normally go a different way. So those are the scriptures that I really rely on.
Thanks for sharing, both of you. Those are powerful. Those are powerful images and powerful words. I like the question that Frank devised about what would you tell your younger self if you could go back. What would you tell your younger self?
Go ahead.
I have a younger brother, and without saying it in exact words, I always had the satisfaction of being the obedient child. And by that I mean I didn't really give my parents any trouble. But in my heart of hearts, I know that James Dobson tells a story about a little kid who says, well, I'm sitting down on the outside, but I'm standing up on the inside. And I think that's me. A few years ago, I tried to look for a book that was talking about rebellious Christians. And there isn't such a thing, which kind of tipped me off. Roxanne, you have a problem. And so, you know, I would say, trust what your parents are saying. Trust what you read in the Bible. Don't be so hard-headed.
I had wanted to look at something, but it was, I'll start with, I'm not sure I've listened, quite frankly. And so, because I was not in the listening mode. So I'm not sure, I'll eventually get to maybe what I might pass on to someone who is listening. But a long time ago, 35 plus years ago probably, a gentleman by the name of Knox White gave a Wednesday night devotional, and he titled it, If Only. And basically, if only really doesn't, it keeps you where you're at, is what his message was if only I'd done this, or if only, and Paul reminds us, I don't look back, but I look forward. And so I don't want to look back. It's hard for me to look back. So what I try to do is look forward, and I think strive to do better today than I did yesterday, and that would be my message to a young person today, and that is just be better today than you were yesterday, and just keep going that route. And I think that's scriptural, and I think that's probably what I would try to, what I'm trying to do today even. So
You both alluded to being at Park as a place where you've grown spiritually. there's no doubt that Park has benefited from you guys being here. And believe it or not, which I take by the look on your faces, you don't believe that, but
Yeah.
there's a calmness about both of you, and a quiet assurance that comes through if anybody takes the time just to talk to you a little bit. Both of you are thinkers, and deep thinkers, and I'm not going to say one's better than the other, but Roxanne, you are a deep thinker. You're a very deep thinker, and as you've gone through your life, and now you're involved in grandkids even from afar.
Now you're in your golden years or something.
Well, none of us have much longer. Do years. But as you've thought about what is one of the big questions of life that you've seen God answer for you?
Maybe something around, am I good enough? Because perhaps I indicated it earlier, younger self, I just kind of cruised on. A lot of things weren't a temptation for me. And so I'm pretty well aware that I don't get any credit for avoiding things that don't even tempt me. So redirect me. Where?
Again, I know you're a deep thinker, so you've thought about the big questions of life. Who am I? What's my purpose in this world? And and there may be others, and there are others, big questions, but which of those is God most clearly?
It's coming home that I can't be good enough. I remember a few years ago at your summer series when you brought that out about it's not about trying. It's about, in my poor rendition of what you said, just about letting Jesus work through you, perhaps. And so that's really helpful. It's really helpful because the rebellious part of me, I don't want to do certain things, I'm probably the most hard-headed as far as if I don't want to do it, I really don't want to do it. And that's hard for me. And so acknowledging that, well, you can't win God's love. He's already done everything. He's already done everything. Now, what is your response to him? How appreciative are you, actually, Roxanne? Can you look at his example and say, that's, the way Jesus responded or something. So.
Probably along the same lines, but it has been certainly said here through this congregation several times, but that Jesus has done it all. He's already won the battle between life and death. He's sacrificed himself for us, for me. And again, acceptance of that, but then as I, again, understand it more and more, it just, to me, it frees you. It really frees you from so many things, I guess. It's not that you shouldn't still be doing good works or anything like that. That's not what I mean. It's just, I can lay my head down at night and just feel peace that it's not me, again, it's Him. And I just need to let myself let the Spirit work in me to become more like Him.
And it's not a new message.
No,
No,
it was taught all those churches.
We've heard it all along.
Yeah.
We've sung it all along.
Yeah,
But until you internalize it, and then once you internalize it, it's like wonderful that you begin to get it. You feel just a little bit like you're beginning to get it.
Thank y'all for sharing. We've got to stop. I still got more questions, but we got to stop. And don't run off.
Okay.
Don't run off. As we have done each evening, we're going to ask everybody to come forward, and we're going to pray with you guys and pray over you guys. And thank you for sharing your time with us and your thoughts with us tonight. Thank you.